Hi, I'm Barry Borgerson. My formal education was in the computer field, and I have a PhD in computer science from the University of California, Berkeley. I had a wonderful career in the computer field, starting out as a technical contributor where I designed the microarchitecture of a very successful computer, then went on to technical management where I oversaw the development of a large-scale uh, imaging systems, and then got promoted into general management, where at the peak I had responsibility for thousands of people in multiple countries. Along the way, I noticed that we couldn't always get the results we wanted because people couldn't get their bad behavior habits out of their own way. And as the technology kept driving changes, they struggled to make culture changes. So at some point, I got so interested in this topic of things we do automatically that I decided to retire early from a lucrative executive career and pursue this. And you'll see some of that, the results of that pursuit today. And these days, I've switched from designing or managing computer systems to transformational changes, coaching people through transformational changes for counterproductive behaviors or the need for culture change as the environment keeps changing rapidly. This presentation focuses on the human aspects of big history. In other words, the latter part of the big history spectrum. Uh, Big history threshold 8 has become self-destructing, most clearly seen in our self-governing systems, but also in other areas are not far behind. We currently have a fundamental abilities mismatch, and I will explain to you shortly what I mean by that, but that's causing threshold 8 to self-immolate. Our big history community can lead the way to threshold 9. So the theme of this thing is we need a threshold 9, and I'll explain what that is. We want to resurrect many endangered benefits of threshold 8. As threshold 8 served us very, very well, but it no longer is. We want to overcome the abilities mismatch by conquering the mental world. And we want to create a new empowering level for the maturation of the human species. So we're really talking here about humans and about fundamental advances in our maturation process. This is just an overview, of course, so I will offer you a manuscript that develops these presented concepts much further. We must recognize that we have two classes of problems. Some problems we solve very well and are getting better all the time. Other problems we cannot solve adequately, and surprisingly, we're getting worse. What can possibly be causing this discrepancy? How come we have this strange phenomena and we don't clearly understand it? To gain an empowering insight into this mysterious issue, list some problems that we solve extremely well. Now, normally, if I was doing this interactively, I would ask you the participants to present some. This is a recording, so I'm going to pause for a minute so you can see if you can identify and get involved in this discussion. What types of problems do you, your organization, your society solve very well? I hope you came up with some. The obvious ones are science, discovery about the physical world. We're very good at that. Technology development, product engineering, medicine creation, and even business management. We're quite good at that. Now, how about going to the other side? List some types of problems we do not solve well. I'll give you a little time to think about that and maybe write them down. Okay, I hope you identified some. The most glaringly obvious today is our self-governing systems. Uh, these are the most consequential and visible and acknowledged uh, areas where we're just not doing well at all. How about in business? If you happen to be part of the business world, you should know something about that. How about in our consistent shared values? We have hit a tipping point in many societies now, tragically in politics, which we just alluded to. The West's grand experiment in self-governance is now on a power dive. This political degeneration will obviously have impacts on other segments. The same underlying process is already directly impacting businesses and other areas. Uh, Unlike for politics, most business people do not yet recognize this systemic jeopardy they are in. They fall for simplistic solutions and cannot make timely culture changes. So why do we have two major classes of problems? I mean, this is a major issue. We've got problems we solve well and we're getting better. We have problems we don't solve well and we're getting worse. And we don't have a good explanation for why that's happening. Okay, if you try to look at it just in politics or just in business or just in values or just in freedoms, it's hard to solve the problem. You need to look at the big picture. So what is common across domains? And what types of mechanisms are creating these mysteries? Okay, we must make a hard distinction now between the brain and the mind. The brain focus is what most people work on. Very often, even when investigators say they are studying the mind, they actually focus on the brain. We need to now start focusing on the mind directly. The brain is part of the physical world, isn't it? But the mind isn't. It's not part of the physical world. So it's a very different process. And it turns out, since it is not part of the physical world, the processes we've been using aren't working very well. The mind does not operate like most people assume. We generally have a casual, informal assumption that most of our mental activities are focused on our thinking abilities, right? And maybe we have some bad habits. So represent the thinking abilities as a light bulb. We think about this. That's where we are. But we need to go to another level. The thinking is really only a part of us. It's not that we have a few bad habits. We do many things involuntarily, and we'll be discussing those. Okay, so we need to acknowledge that we operate in two distinct modes. We have a thinking mode, and we have an automatic mode. And again, the light bulb for the thinking mode to represent it, and a robot, because we act robot-like when we do things automatically that we don't control. So what are some of the characteristics of the thinking mode? It consumes our awareness. Right now, you're in the thinking mode. You're listening to what I'm saying and you're processing it. I'm in the thinking mode. I'm presenting things to you. It's visible. We understand what our thinking mode is doing. That's where we live. This is where our explicit knowledge resides. And it's where, very importantly, it's where we create our intentions, isn't it? How we intend to do things. You intended to watch this video and you're doing it. You may intend to interact with me at the session at the International Big History Association annual conference. But what about the automatic mode? It's outside of our awareness. We don't notice internally what we do. It's elusive. We have opaque processes. We don't know how the processes work very well. We can't see them. It's where our tacit knowledge lies. And very, very importantly, it can be elusive. In other words, we can have activities going on there that deceive us. We can have certainties that don't correspond with anything else, and we'll get into that. Okay, let's look at the modern revolution. Big history threshold 8. There's a difference between how well that revolution did on the mental world and the physical world. The science revolution is the part that focused mainly on the physical world, and it emancipated our thinking mode. That's what happened. We got very, very good at exercising our thinking abilities, maximizing it. And that made progress in conquering the physical world. That's pretty obvious. What's not so obvious, and what I think's been missing, is that in this automatic part of our mind, along with the science revolution, was an internal construct, a worldview, if you like, that created a framework to make this possible. Okay, the contemporary, so along with the science revolution, there was a European Enlightenment, and it created useful insights into our automatic mode, but it did not build a comprehensive theory of the mind. So that's where we've been falling behind, because we're much better at the physical world than we are at the mental world, and up until recently that hasn't been a huge problem. Now it is. So I can only give you an overview here. I will give you, make available to you, some of you, a few copies of a manuscript that provides a general theory of the mind, because we don't have one now, and we've reached a point where we definitely need it. Okay, now we have to get into that abilities mismatch that I mentioned earlier. Physical world prowess is overwhelming our current human capacities. That is, we have created technologies with our thinking mode that we're so good at, that our ability to accommodate them, to handle them on the human side of the ramifications, is getting overwhelmed, and that's a fundamental abilities mismatch that's causing our problems. To create the future we desire, we must now do as well for the mental world as we do for the physical world. That's kind of a shocker. People aren't thinking about that, and they need to, and you need to, and our society needs to. That requires that we learn to effectively manage our automatic mode. What has fundamentally changed to cause our dire situation? Okay, now that's a real problem, isn't it? And I'm going to not go through that today. I'm going to let you, those of you who are interested in figuring it out or finding out about it, get a copy of the manuscript. And we have a chronic lack of understanding of the effects of automatic human activities. The human mind is a unique phenomenon in the universe, right? It's not like anything else. It's different than the brain, isn't it? It therefore requires a unique theory to understand and manage effectively. We need a comprehensive theory of the mind, and we've been lacking one. The Enlightenment legacy served the West and other areas very well for 2 centuries, long time. It is now fundamentally inadequate to satisfy our escalating needs. So what we've been relying on from the Enlightenment is no longer going to serve us. Future successes and well-being will now depend on conquering involuntary mental activities. That's the theme you're seeing here over and over again. Okay, big history people, you folks that are watching this now and participating, can provide a context for our next mega ascent. And here's a proposal I'm making. Big history thresholds provide powerful way to organize major discontinuous changes. We all know that. We're part of that group, that society, and that's how we view the world. And it can help us visualize the importance of our needed transformation now. Now that's new. That's new. We're not using it to look forward. We're using it to look backward. Threshold 8 has now unfortunately become fundamentally unstable, and it's creating a mega descent. So all the problems that we talked about earlier that we can't do well, and we're not out of control on those. It's causing society-wide mega descents in so many areas that overall we're not doing well. By altering recent threshold criteria, the big history framework can contribute to the next mega ascent. Okay, bold statement, and I'm hoping to be able to persuade you here, and maybe much better in the manuscript, is that we have available to us a mega ascent right now. So we desperately need to create threshold 9, and that's what the title of this presentation is. First, the growing descents in many areas due to the abilities mismatch. In other words, we're having problems because we're creating technologies, products that we're so good at with our threshold 8 capabilities that it's causing a mismatch. And we need to restabilize. So there's marvelous things that brought us in the threshold 8. And some of those, the technology part is still going very well, but the ramifications of those, our freedoms, our values, progress, the aspirational values, for the legacy of the Enlightenment, our self-governing systems, many things are falling apart. So those were advances we made, and we need to reestablish them. And this is a way that we need to enable self-governance to prevail over authoritarian regimes. Because right now, the way we are suffering through mass manipulations in our political world, authoritarian regimes are gaining an advantage because we're self-destructing. Okay, this is a bold statement, and I'm convinced it's true. The threshold 8 was a major advance in the maturation of the human species. We'd gone from supernatural views of the physical world to natural views. We conquered the physical world so well. Threshold 9 will be the next major advance in the maturation of the human species. And we need that to provide a future that we all long for, because right now we are going in reverse. Okay, thresholds 1 to 6 criteria. We can greatly if we alter some big history thresholds, right? I mean, that's what I'm saying. I'm suggesting we need to do that. Thresholds 1 to 6 will remain as originally formulated. So David Christian's original work on the criteria was discontinuous increases in physical world complexity. That remains the same. That works very well. We get that. How about threshold 7? Well, I'm suggesting to you that this should be the transition point for threshold criteria. So it does match the original criteria. Discontinuous advances in physical world complexity. Where did that happen? Biological evolution produced greater human capacities, right? So that's definitely in the physical world. But in the mental world, capabilities, we started on this new path now, right? Complex languages, agriculture, societies. So you can see this either way. And this is where we need to start segueing to human activities, mental world capabilities. So threshold 8 criteria now. Complexity does not help us progress here. That criterion works best for the physical world thresholds. A different threshold criteria can power us to solve mental world problems, and we need that now desperately. So switch to discontinuous advance in human capabilities, because it maximized the effectiveness of the thinking mode. So if we look at threshold 8 as increasing human capacities, it maximized the effectiveness of our thinking mode, which we didn't have before. It empowered conquering the physical world. So we look at it that way, it gives us new opportunities to look forward. And it served humanity well for 2 centuries, starting with the West. So that's where, modern societies came out of this, but they're in jeopardy now. Now, how about threshold 9 criteria? Same thing now. We want to use discontinuous advances in in human capabilities. Finally gain control of the automatic mode and empower conquering our mental world. A major theme we're talking about here. So mainly the big history society, the big history thresholds, the big history insights have been observing and organizing past major transitional events. But now we have the opportunity, because now we're in the human world. We didn't understand this framework when the science revolution and the Enlightenment happened. It happened to us, but we can look back and careful, very smart observers have done that and say, okay, this is really a major threshold. It's threshold 8. But now we can move to the next level and create a threshold. Very, very powerful. This will be the first threshold that we explicitly create. It's an exciting opportunity, and it's a necessary one. Okay, what are two human nature types of inadequacies? Just going to give you a hint of what's going on here. Both of these operate in the automatic opaque mode of human activities, okay, in that other mode of our mind. Simplistic solutions. Now this is driven by discomfort, avoidance, or escape, and it's our automatic mode driving our thinking mode. In other words, we get fooled. We need to escape discomfort, and we get manipulated with simplistic solutions. And by the way, simplistic solutions are ones that satisfy your desire for a success without creating the success you desire. The other big thing is certainty illusions. And that's a difference between in here and out there realities. And most people can't tell the difference much of the time. You've got in here realities that don't connect with what's out there. And here's what happens. These, in the automatic part of the mind, it creates certainties that operate independent of correspondence with facts. And that's why I show this lens to which we see the world in the robotic lens is yellow here, because it may correspond and it may not. It's independent of it, of facts, and also in business, it's independent of alignment with success needs. So there you can see the problem. You're successful. This automatic certainty illusion, we call it a culture in business, aligns with your success needs. The environment's changing more and more rapidly because of technology, and we have a deep belief, a deep certainty that we're right, and that's why we don't make culture changes in a timely manner. Now, there's another type of issue related to this, and that's certainty delusions that operate against known facts. And those are running rampant right now, particularly in the political world. And without wanting to get involved in political agendas, I could say in terms of process, there's a large number, millions of people in the U.S. right now that genuinely have a certainty delusion that the presidential election, the last presidential election, was stolen from the incumbent. And that's just factually not true. So it's a certainty delusion, but it's very, very effective, and people know how to and are constantly constructing it. Okay, here's some involuntary, just to give you a flavor of what this looks like. We have a second untethered form of truth. Isn't that amazing? Most people think truth means something corresponds to what you're saying, to a theory, to an assertion. But so what's the problem there? It's the certainty illusion. In other words, people experience something that's true that doesn't correspond with anything outside of their mind. So the in here is flawed, and it doesn't correspond with what's out there. That's an amazing thing to look at. Most people don't understand that. How can people be made to believe assertions that are clearly false? Okay, that's what we just talked about a minute ago. Certainty delusions, right? People widespread now. And because, again, of this abilities mismatch, technologies are driving forward the ability to do this, and people aren't equipped to resist it. So why do self-help programs rarely produce lasting results? I mean, there's a massive self-help industry because people do want to change. That automatic part of themselves, often a bad behavior, a habit that they want to get rid of. But why doesn't it work? It's an unfair fight. In other words, the automatic mode doesn't want to change, and the thinking mode, the little light bulb there cowering behind there, just where our intentions to change, just keeps losing this unfair fight. Okay, I've got a manuscript for a book called Growing Up is Hard to Do. And the growing up isn't about how we go from being teenagers to adults. It's how societies are growing up. And it models the elusive and elusive aspects of human nature. There is the elusive part, or we don't recognize what's going on. The elusive, certainty illusions and certainty delusions. We get fooled, we get duped. We think things are true and they aren't. We believe things that are absolutely nonsensical. Okay, this book provides a generalized theory of the automatic mode of human activities. So that's what the Enlightenment legacy that we inherited didn't provide us. It provided us some guidelines, some guardrails, but it didn't provide us a theory. Now you can have one, and it's available. And it addresses many mysterious problems and shows solution paths. So it doesn't just help you understand it, it shows how to solve some of these problems. The reason it's part of this, our organization now, and I'm presenting it here, is it makes heavy use of big history thresholds to explain the next level of growing up for humanity. So this is a perfect fit for big history society, and it takes it to the next level from observing and organizing to grabbing hold and creating. Okay, so members here can take a lead in conquering automatic human activities, and this can move us to a discontinuously new achievement level. I will provide a free copy of the book manuscript. So obviously, in a presentation like this, one never sells anything, and I haven't even published it yet. I'm still getting it out. I've got some excellent people who have in my network who have given me very good feedback, and I'm continuing to improve it with this feedback. But I'll send you a free copy, or at least a few, depending on how many ask it, if you commit to reading through it, because I'm going to keep track of it. I'm going to interact with you on how you're doing, and you have to commit to give me feedback. So don't take it, wait and buy the book later if you want, or ignore it to your jeopardy. I know people say they're too busy. They're so busy now. They're too busy to do any of this. But you're getting too busy to succeed and to have a future you want. Okay, I will make time to have a one-on-one feedback. That's why I'm only going to give out a few manuscripts to people who really want to avail themselves of this opportunity, and a one-on-one feedback session should be mutually beneficial. I can answer questions for you of things you don't understand very well, and you can give me feedback on where things that worked very well for you and maybe some areas that didn't work very well. So you can request a manuscript for me, Barry, at twoselfs.com. And again, two selves is we have a thinking mode and an automatic mode. Therefore, we act as if we have two different selves. And so my business, my website, my email address are two selves. Barry at twoselfs.com. Thank you very much for participating, well, at least for listening to here. I hope you did some participation by answering some of the questions, and I'll look forward to hearing back from some of you on this. Thanks. Bye.